it's created this narrative which shapes the way that the public comes to think of and understand emerging science, particularly as it has to do with manipulating life. Frankenstein itself comes from this original inspiration where Mary Shelley would spend her spare time going to lectures where she'd watch scientists perform experiments on galvanism in front of an audience, and they'd attach a pair of electrodes to floppy frog legs, and then she'd watch Bewitched as they would quiver with electricity and almost seem as though science could animate the dead, which of course it couldn't, but it was bringing in these ideas that there's now this unprecedented scientific ability to make this threshold more permeable between the dead and the living.
You know, there's a lot of misconception that has to be battled in the Frankenstein notion. One is the notion that, of course, Dr. Frankenstein creates life. And it's very similar to how we create life. I mean, we're not synthesizing it from scratch. We're in no way creators of the universe. So we take entities of organisms and we adapt them into something new. So Frankenstein takes the inanimate pieces of corpses and puts them together and creates a human that's brand new. And so, I mean, people see the relationship between creation and a monster versus the idea of creation and responsibility. I would say that I think it's somewhat of a feedback loop, in that there's a natural tendency for human beings to be driven by fear more than any other emotion. And that seeps into our stories.
Familiarity always risks or welcomes breeding fondness with the technology. So the more that we hear about it, the more accustomed to the idea of what it does in the world we become. And the more we tend to relax about what at first sounds kind of scary. And it's normal to be apprehensive about fairly revolutionary changes when you first hear of them. But it's really fascinating to look back to the recombinant DNA technology of the 1970s, for example, when we first discovered that we could combine the DNA from two different organisms in a single molecule. And this gave rise to a lot of shock and awe and surprise and concern about what it might mean to do genetic engineering in this way. And now, of course, that kind of recombinant DNA technology is not only just so mundane and absolutely everywhere, but the original form of it has become obsolete because we have way more sophisticated tools to do the kind of genetic engineering that we now do. It'll just be a yawn in about 10 years when we're talking about some of the things that are currently big question marks to us.
I'm really hoping that synthetic biology as a whole can drive a different appreciation, a different definition and relationship with what we see to be nature. For years, we have peddled this notion that humans are separate entities from nature. There's the arrogance that humans are somehow divinely above nature and we are the caretakers of the world and we can do whatever we want with it. But there really hasn't been a universal realization that we are nature.